We're going to talk about competitive gaming on touch screens. Real quick. Just a quick show of hands. Who here is an actual competitive gamer? Most of you guys. That's good. A lot of people anyway. Who out of those competitive gamers, who today has a deep conviction that competitive gaming can actually be done on touchscreens in the first place? That's really good. You know, I did this about, I want to say 9 months ago at a different conference where literally, I think there was one guy who stood up and said, I think it can be done. We've obviously believed in this in a long time, and we've been working on it, and it's just great to see that more and more people are seeing that it actually can be done. So my name is Kristian. I am the Chief Operating Officer and Executive Director, Original and Investor in Super Evil Megacorp, today spending 25 hours a day building out what I'm hoping and what we are hoping is going to be one of the companies that will help really build the era when the touchscreen generation finally gets hold of the kind of gaming experiences that all of us grew up with on PCs. I grew up with games like Unreal Tournament, Warcraft 3, and sort of fondly remember those nights spent together with my friends, having lugged each other's PCs over to one place, playing as a LAN party, competitively, cooperatively, literally all night, and then pretending to our mums that we would have slept at some point in time. And just those experiences were incredible, visceral, deep, engaging. And we all feel very sad that the touchscreen generation is constrained to kind of 3-minute gaming sessions. You can't have an all-nighter with 3-minute gaming sessions. It just doesn't work. So, anyway, what my talk is about today is really lessons, if you like, from building a competitive game. I feel super cheesy saying building an eSport, because I just don't know that you even can build an eSport. We've set our sights on building a legit, genuine, competitive game that we would want to play ourselves. And then we've just been delighted that the community has taken it up in such a big way as a competitive activity for them. But eSport, anything with eSport is clickbait these days, so, you know, it's an eSports summit, so I put eSports in my title. Anyway, a little bit about me. So I've actually been building game companies for a long time. In fact, I used to play so much games as a kid that I never managed to get myself a proper job. That was my mom's prediction since a very early age. So I've actually spent all of my time since leaving university building game companies. I was originally a co-founder of what today is Glue Mobile, with the dream to put what I then used to play on my Nintendo into people's pockets through enabling them to download games onto mobiles. After that, building Playfish with a dream to connect people playing games through social networks. I was originally an investor, led the seed investment round into a company called Segerstrale, that's today the largest touchscreen gaming company in the world by revenue. And I was on their board of directors for a long time until they became part of SoftBank. And as of the past 3 years or so, I've been part of building Super Evil Megacorp. So I've sort of had the good fortune of building what I felt back then would be sort of the next big growth wave in games, and being there very early and made lots and lots and lots of mistakes along the way, and have had some successes and have worked with some amazing people. And one of the things that I feel is most amazing about the touchscreen gaming market today is you listen to any of the analysts or the bankers and they'll tell you it's like I heard the term yesterday, purple ocean. It is so red and it's so competitive and so visceral and no one can survive that. It's like the reddest ocean ever, so it's now a purple ocean. I actually don't believe any of that. I think if you create an amazing product, you can still punch through in many ways. But what's amazing about the notion of core gaming on touchscreens is that I think for the first time as an industry, we're in a place where those of us who grew up as core gamers finally both have the volume and the the technical capability on these devices that could potentially support some very, very large multiplayer competitive games over time. And I'm just excited to be part of this industry at a very early stage of its growth, but it's something that we as a company are very focused on. So as a company, just a quick boilerplate on what we're doing. We're about 4 years old. We are a company that focuses very much on creating the best home for really veteran core gaming talent that's made games at places like Riot or Rockstar Games and other places. We try to create a fairly small company, but a small company with hopefully a very big impact. We are only about 50 people or so across the board. We don't necessarily aim to grow that much. We have about 5 or 10 open positions, but it's what we believe is going to more or less be it for the foreseeable future. We have our own technology, so we have our own game engine, which has been developed over a long time by one of the most talented developers of console-grade game engines out there. We have about $41 million in venture funding, has some great people. We really have no excuse not to succeed somehow, but this industry is really hard, so we've been learning a lot over the past couple of years. Our dream as a company is ultimately to create a franchise for decades. We would love to be, you know, the kind of companies that we loved as we grew up, companies like Blizzard and more recently Riot, who've been able to create a following and a community by staying really true to the player and staying really true to the core values of the community out there. Because we believe that these types of, you can't acquire your way, like user acquire your way to millions and millions of happy players. You've just got to build it, and you've got to support the community and let the community grow, and that's what we want to do. We also want to create experiences which are not just really fun to play, but really fun to watch. And in particular, seeing how the PC esports era has sort of had these growing audiences year on year is something that we're really inspired by. And we're hoping that by being able to bring these style of experiences to touchscreens, we can actually help grow the broader esports world, or the broader spectated gameplay world, if you like, because in many ways it's kind of more relatable. Everyone has that device in their pockets. Anyways, I'll play you a super quick video of some of our competitive gaming events over the past 6 months to give you a sense of what Vainglory is all about right now in terms of its competitive scene. Vainglory is a 3v3 MOBA, single lane with a jungle. Matches last about 20 minutes, played on almost any touchscreen in the world today, and you have a very wide variety of devices that play, tournaments all across the world. Here's a quick compilation. Let's see if we can get some audio as well.
Right, it's not enough. Donna goes down. He might go for Donna flip. Two, they got one. He's got a hit two.
Welcome everyone to the eSports Arena here in Santa Ana for the 2015 Vainglory Autumn Season Live Finals!
Going to seal the deal here at 2-0, or will they? They take down the Kraken, one hit from win.
Remember that there are no Vayne turrets available. They might look to try and end the game themselves.
That's it. Is game 3 from Liberation X.
Liberation X! Oh man, what a fantastic game. I just can't believe it, I'm lost for words. What an amazing series we have.
So the game was originally released about just over a year ago on high-end iOS devices. We've since then increased our device support a lot. We released it on Android about 7 or 8 months ago, and we've since lowered the device requirements a whole ton. And we're still incredibly early. But one of the things that have taken us by incredible surprise has been how quickly the competitive community in the game has grown. In fact, so much so that every company has to be the number one at something. And today we are by some margin the number one touchscreen eSport. In fact, whether you look at it by prize pools, by views, we had over 20 million stream views last year. And in fact, this last weekend alone, we had the North America Championships, the North America Regional Championships at the Red Bull Arena in Los Angeles this last weekend. And that on its own had over 1 million stream views. So the overall kind of viewership is growing. The amount of the prize pool was over $350,000 over the past 6 months. Only a small proportion of that came from us. Much of it came from sponsors. There's been folks like, say, Amazon, NVIDIA, Red Bull, others that have gotten involved. We've also worked with ESL, OGN, a whole bunch of other kind of enablers, if you like, in the esports space. All to learn, because frankly, this is something that is entirely new to us. We're excited about the growth of competitive play, but it's something that is still new, and after every weekend that we run an event or a tournament, we still continue to have this massive amount of internal feedback on how can we make this better. We ask our players, we ask our audiences across the board. And overall, the game has grown very rapidly. We don't actually spend anything on user acquisition or any other sort of traditional mobile games forms of growth. All we do is we try to keep our community happy. We try to invest in the things that our community want to do. And we can take our time. We're convinced that in the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, somebody's going to build a game on these platforms, which will be the seminal game on touchscreens for core gamers. And we don't think that can be rushed. We want to try to get it right and then gradually invite more players to be part of the experience. So after about a year, if you like, of operating the game and now 6 or 7 months of eSports or competitive play, we've learned a couple of things across the board. We've certainly made a lot of mistakes. We've gotten some things right, some things wrong. But I wanted to kind of share some of those. And before I do that, I wanted to play a quick video. One of the more significant recent events in Vainglory was that even though already last year we had a bunch of European esports teams like Team Secret, SK Gaming, G2 Esports, all acquired Vainglory teams in Europe. Last week, TSM, Team Solomid, probably one of the most famous North American professional esports organizations, got into Vainglory by acquiring the current world champions, Team Alliance. And that was kind of a big deal for us because in lots of ways, even though we're focused on making a game that's great, it's always wonderful just to have that kind of vote of confidence. So let me play a quick video of a profile of then Team Alliance, now Team Solomid, from this last weekend. If we can have a bit of audio again.
So we recently got some pretty big news. Alliance has now been acquired by Team Solomid. We are now paid professionals playing Vainglory full-time. It is our jobs now. We were absolutely incredibly stunned that we were getting this opportunity and incredibly grateful.
TSM is a really big deal, and it's a big deal for us to be acquired by them. When I find out that Alliance would be switching over to TSM, it was so super exciting. Like, I know TSM because I was a League of Legends player for a while, so TSM is a really big name for me. So just the idea of being acquired by such a great team and such a great organization, it just really let me know that I was on the right path.
Some people would definitely take it on as a lot of pressure. I think it's something that is actually motivating us as a team. Now we have someone that we can represent who's well known on a global status, and we really look forward to playing our best on behalf of Team Solomid, and we're going to take an incredible amount of pride in that.
It's really important winning this tournament. We want to make kind of a new name for ourselves under TSM.
If we win this tournament, it's going to mean a ton for Team Solomid. Vainglory as an esport is still incredibly young. I think TSM has taken a leap of faith with us, but if we're able to win this tournament, my smile will be enormous. It is hard to express in words how I feel in moments of that. I still can't express how I felt after we won VIPL, but winning under the TSM banner will be incredible.
So one of the things, and the reason I played that video also, is the thing that really struck a chord with me last weekend, as they filmed that video and we listened to the interviews live, was previously we were growing this game for ourselves because we wanted to create a great game for us to play and obviously try and create as successful a community as possible. But now there's literally people whose livelihoods right now depend on actually playing the game, and it sort of gives you a different sense of responsibility. When it's somebody's job to play it, you kind of think in a different way just how big a responsibility it is to ultimately grow that game. So anyway, so in lots of ways we feel like we've had a great first year out there. We've certainly learned a lot, and we're hoping, in fact this year has kicked off incredibly well for us across the board with our first season. We run quarterly seasons, so we're right at the end of winter season right now. We just had the North America Championships. Next weekend are the European Championships. In fact, I'm flying to London straight after this to host those. And we have the Korean Championships as well next weekend. And then spring season kicks off end of this month. And the cycle starts again, if you like. So we've had a good first year, but in terms of lessons, I figured what I'd do is I'd sort of split them into 5 different parts, and all of these have a bunch of bullets. Most of them, I've tried to stick to lessons which are specific to touchscreen esports, because I'm sure all of you, or many of you guys will know a lot more about running PC esports than I do. But certainly, I've sort of split them into product learnings, community learnings, marketing learnings, business learnings, and then just a whole bunch of really practical learnings. So if we start with product. One of the things which is kind of obvious, but really is probably worth restating, is the importance of control accuracy. We did an awful lot of work trying to figure out how to bring competitive gameplay to mobile. One of our hypotheses early on was, hey, we need to bring more natural controls, maybe gestures, swipes, gyroscope, any of those things into the game. Turns out players hate that across the board. We hated it ourselves, and we could validate it outside, because one of the philosophies that has really paid off for us is to think through the control scheme of the game in such a way that you can ultimately, after about a minute or two of playing, you even forget that you're playing on a device. Your fingers just move naturally, and the only control input we accept is a tap. In fact, we spent a lot of time optimizing that tap to make sure that there is absolutely zero control latency across the board. And what's interesting is that we thought that, in fact, leading to the next point, we thought that screen size would be an issue, because you know what, fat fingers and a small touchscreen, and you know what, even your fingers kind of obscure part of the touchscreen. As it turns out, and we thought even originally we were a tablet gaming company, because we figure how on earth could you last hit on a small 5-inch screen? As it turns out, kids today are pretty incredible with their fingers on touchscreens. In fact, we spent a long time figuring out controls that doesn't obscure the screen, but it turned out that actually a single tap-based control is like the equivalent of if you like a mouse cursor and a keyboard in some ways. You have a mouse cursor that you're pressing with, and it turns out that your finger is actually just as accurate. And even if you feel like it's not quite as accurate, it turns out that when you need to execute moves like kiting or juking in a MOBA, which is basically, say, running in one direction and shooting in the other, running in the other direction, shooting in the other, that is a pretty complicated mechanical thing to do on a mouse. I mean, I'm a fairly I played an awful lot of League of Legends and other styles of other MOBAs on PC, and it is actually one of the hardest things I find. Say if you play in a ranged carry, and you need to move away while constantly shooting the opponent, or hitting the opponent, or basic attacking the opponent. That sort of thing is actually super easy to execute with your fingers, and you can even create much more complicated maneuvers where you say pre-select a target, fire an ability, move, basic attack, and so on, with really natural taps. And one of the things that we've been delighted by is to see how many hyper-competitive players play on very small screens. In fact, the number 2 team in North America right now plays almost exclusively on 5.5-inch screens on their iPhones, which is just incredible to me. Like for me, an iPhone 6 Plus is probably a good size screen to play on. Some people just play on iPads because they feel a need for the bigger screen. But it turns out that what you lose in screen size, you actually gain in how quickly you can move. So it's a bit like the acceleration setting for your mouse. It's like it's either less accurate or it's faster. More accurate or faster, that way. So it turns out that when you think about screen size, remember that the vast majority of the world is going to probably play on fairly small screens, and it's worth thinking about making those guys first-class consumers of your interface, whatever it is. 30 session length. So when we got started and we initially launched the game, Vainglory's average game length is about 20 minutes. An awful lot of people were poo-pooing us, saying, look, it's a mobile game. It's been proven over and over again, mobile players don't play for longer than 3 minutes because that's the sort of attention span of a mobile gamer. That may very well be true for a lot of mobile gamers. Turns out it really isn't true for everybody. 20-minute session is perfectly fine for people who are interested in competitive gaming. Could we also make shorter game modes? Sure. But what we tried to do was create a session length which allows for tactical and strategic depth, which is akin to some of the best competitive games on PCs, which means that there are different phases to the game. There are phases where you outthink the opponent. You're basically playing a game of chess as well as an action game, if you like. You build, you counter-build. You think about objectives, you think about rotations, you think about where you should be, about taking objectives at different times. And what we tried to do was squeeze that experience to as short as it can be, while still maintaining the build-up, the tension, if you like, that something is building up, and resolving itself in a team fight and an objective, and the next thing. And then again, releasing that tension, and then building up the tension again. And turns out that that's worked really well for us. Our philosophy from the start was, we didn't try to create a game that was particularly easy to learn, or a game that was particularly sort of onboarding friendly or rewards you for absolutely everything, with massive coin fountains and things, which is what mid-core games are very good at today. We try to first and foremost solve for core gamers and try to figure out, can we create a game that has legitimacy, that we ourselves would love to play every day? And in fact, as a company, we still play every day at 5 p.m. We have a company guild, all of us play, and even when we go home, I still spend more of my time playing Vainglory today than any other game out there. Partially because I'm part of the community, but partially also because just as a core gamer, I'm hooked. I don't have as much time for PC gaming today, and I can sneak in a game of Vainglory almost anywhere right now, as opposed to having to be in front of my game PC at home. So turns out, absolutely core gamers, like as was our philosophy from the start, we figure we're going to design for gamers, regardless of platform, as opposed to designing for mobiles when it comes to session length. And that's paid off pretty well for us in terms of the growth of the competitive scene. It's probably also inhibited us from shooting to the top of the charts immediately also, because it obviously has, to some degree, constrained the people that we've been able to focus on inviting into the community. But at the same time, it's really helped us build a community that is incredibly passionate about competitive gameplay and the game that we've looked to create. Fourthly, networking. So a game like Vainglory and any other MOBA for that matter really relies on fast networking and high quality networking. Part of the challenge is that you're always going to be playing on either Wi-Fi or LTE. Nobody plugs in their phone to like a fixed line network, which means, and if you think about competitive gaming, would you play a competitive PC game over Wi-Fi? Probably not, right? Not normally. So you have to work really hard on networking, on figuring out what sort of optimizations at the lowest level of networking you need to do in order to create an experience that doesn't suffer from ping spikes and that creates as steady, if you like, a latency experience as humanly possible. And that's something where, in particular, compared to PC gaming, we can grow everywhere because almost anyone has a phone. So figuring out where to put your servers and figuring out how to create high quality connections between the players and those servers is pretty important. And then lastly, I sort of said this early on, even as an intro to the talk, but I feel super cheesy about saying, hey, we're building an eSport. Fundamentally, the community decides if you're an eSport. Like, we went out to create a competitive game. It turned out that the community shouted back to us super loudly, we want spectator mode, we want you to help us organize ourselves into tournaments and things. And that's been the community deciding all of that. We are wholeheartedly supporting it, but I think, especially today when esports is such a hot word, like going out to say we're going to create an esport is, I think you sort of need to crawl before you walk, before you run, like, make a great game, then make it great to be competitive. And then after that, if the community rewards you with wanting to play it competitively, then support that activity and figure out how to organize it in a good way. And we're still certainly very, very early in that journey. But we are a company that lives and dies by our community, and we really pride ourselves in just how much we interact, all of us, in the company, at all levels of the company, with the community, in order to make sure that we are continuing to steer the ship in the right direction. Which is a good segue to the second big area of learning for us, which is community. In general, there's no other way to build a community than by being authentic. Delegating community somehow to somebody who creates a false persona is just a non-starter, and all of you guys would probably agree with that. But what's interesting about building a competitive game compared to, say, building casual or mid-core games, or for companies that I've been involved in or watched from the outside, is the engagement with that community has to be at a whole different level. When you build a mid-core game, or a casual game, to some degree you can sort of rationalize in your mind that yes, there will always be a vocal minority, but you know what, I'm just going to look at the statistics and the numbers to see what's actually going on behind the scenes. Not so much for a competitive game. Here, the vocal minority actually tends to be a vocal majority and a set of folks who actually have a very deep vested interest in what you are doing. So what we've tried to do is make sure that we engage with the broadest possible community on every single community platform you can imagine, ranging from forums to Reddit to Twitter to Facebook to any other channel in every other regions. Today, we have more than 18 local language community managers whose entire sole full-time job is to sit there and make sure that we listen to our community and hear what they have to say. And the engagement all the way from like that sort of broadest engagement all the way to having a private beta group that can help you figure out balancing of the game, all the way to meeting up with team captains, to meeting up with team owners. All of that stuff is very resource intensive, takes a lot of time, but it helps us have a true north. It helps us as a company understand what it is that we're ultimately actually making and for whom. In fact, one of the biggest surprises that came completely from the community is when we first launched the game, we felt that the thing that was missing the most were social features. We didn't have any chat, we didn't have teams, we didn't have guilds, we didn't have any of that sort of interaction where you could find other people. Actually, it turned out the community didn't want any of that. What they wanted was spectation. They wanted a way to watch other people play the game and a way to stream the game and a way to share it with friends. So this was actually, the Spectation client was something that we created. We actually, because of our engine is a multi-platform engine, we actually released the Spectation client on Macs, actually, because that enables us to output 4K resolution shots from any angle and whatnot in the Halcyon Fold. So lets people create very high quality experiences and high quality videos. But the Spectation client has been something that we've been working on together with our community across the board. They've asked for features, we add features, because at the end of the day, they are our biggest content creators. So that's been a collaborative effort. And for all other kinds of content creation, it's fundamentally a game like Vainglory grows not through your TV ads or your Facebook ads or your other forms of campaigns that you put together. It grows by having a passionate community that wants to get their friends involved. So facilitating that process, facilitating how to enable your community to create content and share that content is something that's turned out to be very important for us and something that we try and support as much as we can. And then finally, private beta. So this is something where, for us, there's just the combinatorial complexity of trying to balance a game like Vainglory is too high for us to be able to do it internally. And by having a fairly large group of private beta players who get the new patch a couple of weeks before it's out, so we can try to figure out, find any problems with it, is very useful. But it's not just useful for that, it's actually a useful way of deepening our relationship with the top players in the world in such a way that we begin to understand sort of the thoughts and hopes and fears of some of these players and begin to understand like what it is ultimately about the balancing of the in-game systems that make them come back every day and that make them feel very interested in helping push the competitive game moving forward. So community has been, right from the start, something that's been incredibly, deeply important to us. It's been something that we've really focused on from the start and something that we found to be incredibly important across the board. However, marketing as a whole has been something that we've been learning perhaps more about than anything else. The first point here shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. Players are pretty darn cynical out there. And if this comes as a surprise, you know, I'm glad you're at GDC and you're learning about gaming because, yeah, this thing has been true for a while. But what's interesting about this is, and in particular, like a year ago when we came out and we said, hey, we're trying to make a competitive game on touchscreens, like the vitriol that we would hear on places like Twitch and Reddit and other places where you would get unfiltered feedback, if you like, was one of massive skepticism and cynicism. And frankly, in some ways, we deserved it because as an industry, mobile gaming, we've been pretty bad at keeping our promises. We put out massive, beautiful 3D rendered like screenshots and then coupled that with a game session experience, which is very janky and 2 minutes and wants your money on day 2. And if you don't have any money, we don't care about you. Kind of mobile gaming has been pretty bad at sort of creating that expectation. So when somebody stands up and says, hey, we want to make a PC-style competitive experience like the ones that we grew up with on touchscreens, the first expectation is that we're lying. And that's actually been really an interesting kind of journey for us because all we've done is we try to combat that with authenticity across the board. And again, rather than trying to buy TV ads saying, hey, this is the thing you should play because it's awesome, we've just worked through the community. In fact, our best community, our best marketing assets across the board, the things that have brought people into the game are all community created across the board. And in fact, fundamentally, when it comes to marketing a core game, and I believe this is actually true for most core games, even on PC today, that by far the strongest marketing channel and the strongest way to drive awareness of the game is the player community itself. And in fact, our philosophy is very much one of, we try to create awesome for our player base, and if we make awesome for them, they hopefully will share it, and if they do share it, we help put the spotlight on the things that they share. Because ultimately, Vainglory is not, the Vainglory experience is as much as we work on it every day and try to make it better, ultimately it's the players that create the experience for each other. And helping highlight that has been a big deal for us. So that's why all of these things has been far more important for us than any form of ad spend or marketing, sort of internal marketing asset development. One of the things that we still struggle with a lot is how to message core game on touch, because it's been messaged in so many ways and caused so much disappointment to date that in some ways we've actually decided to let the community speak for us on this, and we simply amplify whatever it is that they feel is true about the product. So there's some marketing learnings. A couple of business learnings. Free-to-play versus pay-to-win. Right now, the touchscreen gaming, mobile gaming industry as business models are 95% plus pay-to-win. In some way or form, you are actually shortcutting. You become stronger than your neighbor, enemy, clanmate, whatever it might be, by spending a bit of money. For a competitive game, that cannot be the case, right? We have always been fundamentally focused on ensuring total fairness. When you come into the game, you're exactly as powerful as somebody who's been in the game for 10,000 hours. That creates a thing where you have to be much more careful about how you think about business models and how you think about what kind of in-game transactional models you create to ensure that the business model is orthogonal to your power in the game. That is a promise to our players, and it's a promise that we have kept and we aim to keep always moving forward. And so it just requires you to rethink the systems. You can't simply just take systems from games that you've seen in mobile previously. And it's something, frankly, an area of learning for us as well. The other thing that should be obvious at this moment in time, but esports shouldn't really be thought of as a profit center at this moment in time. Yes, you have sponsors that get involved. Yes, tournament organizers get involved. You can get revenue through all sorts of different sources. But I wouldn't think of it as a profit center. A lot of people say it's marketing, but I actually don't think it's marketing either. Because if people don't care about playing your game, they're not going to care about watching your game, typically. There are some edge cases, like when TSM joined Vainglory, a lot of TSM fans would check out, hey, what's this new game that TSM is playing? But the vast majority of cases, people watch the game that they love playing. So esports really, for us, is all about the product experience. It is fundamentally providing our players with the experience of being able to play the game at any time, watch the game being played at the highest level, learn from that gameplay, and get into sort of the usage or consumption pattern that traditional sports has, where you play some, you watch some, you play some, you watch some. And that's simply what we want to provide through through esports. Finally, a couple of practical learnings before I wrap up. And these are kind of ridiculous, but it just has turned out to be things that we didn't expect. First thing, if you want to play in esports one way or the other, you have to learn TV production. And that's like a brick and mortar business. It's literally event organization, thinking through everything from how do you run a live TV production that's going to work out. Everything from how to plan a run or show, to think about talent, to training talent, to all of those things. It's pretty time intensive. If you're going to get into it, you need to appreciate that there's a lot to learn there. And we've been doing this now for 7 months, and we're still learning tons. In fact, this stuff is so much fun that we sometimes worry that we put too much time into it, because we ultimately need to build the game also. The other thing is learning Wi-Fi. It turns out Wi-Fi is actually black magic, dark art. In order to make Wi-Fi work really well, especially in crowded environments like this, is something that, when you have a tournament with an $80,000 prize pool, that outcome cannot be determined by a ping spike because of your lazy Wi-Fi setup. So learning and understanding high-performance Wi-Fi is something that you need to make a core competence of your company. It's ridiculous. I didn't expect to have to do it, but that is what it is. We originally dreamed that, hey, what if we just connect all the devices to a hardwired cable? It turns out players want to play on their own device always, and they want to sit in all sorts of ridiculous positions while they're playing, and there's no way we can guarantee that fixed-line internet will work into that specific device. So Wi-Fi is the way to go, and you need to learn about it. Tournament setups in general, separate tournament servers, figuring out you need a separate tournament client, which I'm telling you already now, you will need a separate tournament client. Figuring out how you distribute those, how do you provision those, how do you make sure that everybody has all their heroes unlocked and all the other things that those tournament accounts need to have. How do you make sure that the integrity of the tournament environment is correct. All of that stuff is something that we've had to learn and develop the specs for ourselves. But then finally, and perhaps more importantly, ultimately, when you think about esports, it is fundamentally about the athletes. Just like the game is about the players in general. The biggest production doesn't matter if the athletes don't get to tell their story, don't get to have their moments of triumph. And this has been something that we've ended up learning a ton about. And to explain the kind of stories that end up being told behind the scenes, because at the end of the day, human stories is why players are interested in watching their game as an esport. Yes, it is about watching the great plays and learning from them and the item builds and whatnot. But it really is about relating to that hero on screen. And last weekend we had this, the TSM were the favorites, but they were nearly knocked out by a team with a 12-year-old ranged carry who has incredible mechanics. His name is Dienzio, and he's probably one of the most talented players right now in North America. He's obviously still at school, and he had his parents there, which is amazing. But I just want to play a quick video where Dienzio tells his story and tells the story of Halcyon Hammer's velocity, to give you a sense of just what kind of stories come out of this.
I think my teammates are really, really good and passionate on how they play. Like, they really do like playing their roles. Like Aloha, he's really good at what he does. When he's playing a hero and he plays it good, he almost never messes up. And on Vains, he's just such a great support. Like, if he's on Catherine, we would just win.
Dienzio has no limit. I've seen him grow into a player that's tilted after one death. Then we go in to play a top 4 team and in Nemesis, and he goes 1-5 in the first couple minutes. Then he goes and carries the rest of the game.
In the first qualifier, we lost to Vega in the round of 16. And that was our first qualifier together. And then we really wanted to go to the live championships, and we knew we had to pull off a winning streak in the qualifier, and that's what we did.
In the second qualifier, we came very close to beating TSM, and this was huge for us mentally because we're showing ourselves, not only everybody else, that we can compete at this level.
When we tied the series with TSM, we kind of didn't focus at that point. We thought it was over. There's no way we can mess up. And then we choked and messed it up. We had it. We had the game. It was ours. And then when we lost, I was so disappointed. They didn't deserve that win. I want my revenge. We're not going to make that mistake again, and we're going to keep our minds focused for our matches and make sure we take it home and then celebrate.
I'm going to just say, fear Enzio. If you ever see him out in solo queue, just surrender. There's not much you can do. So these type of human stories is ultimately what esports engenders, and that is for us ultimately the fundamental emotional resonance that we want to create when it comes to the game. And that's the thing that we hope that we can help surface across our community, and that's the meaning of esports for us. So before I leave you guys, just a final reminder why we are doing this. We talk a lot about the meta of different games. Well, we feel like the meta of the industry fundamentally is that companies have built incredible businesses off the back of a PC install base of about 700 to 800 million gaming PCs out there. Incredible happy communities of, well, sometimes salty, but mostly happy communities of core players off the back of fundamentally only less than a fifth of the world's population having access to these devices. And that base isn't really growing that fast. By the end of this year, there will be over 3 billion touchscreen devices that can play a game like Vainglory. We're still very early in this cycle. We believe over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, somebody's going to go out there and build a company that is 3 to 5 to 7 times as large as the largest PC gaming companies today. That company is going to be built day by day, week by week, month by month, by doing better and better and better with our community. Make our community happier every day, make the product a little bit better every day. We're in no rush, but we're just incredibly excited to be part of that journey and part of that evolution, and look forward to seeing where the industry is going to be heading in the next 3 to 5 years. And with that, thank you very much. We have maybe time for 1 or 2 questions.
Can you talk maybe just a little bit to how you guys handled streaming? Like, it seems like it'd be a lot harder to stream from a mobile device. So how do you build an audience for an esport?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you didn't hear it, how do we handle streaming? So frankly, we had to just learn it ourselves first. It turns out the best way to stream from a mobile device, you can stream in many ways. You can either use something like just a sort of screen sharing, if you like, from the device, but that doesn't look too great. Best way to do it is via capture box. So if you have a HDMI out from the device, just capture it and then stream it via a PC. It's pretty clunky, it's pretty difficult, but it's something that the core players out there will do. And in fact, there's a lot of good capture boxes that are pretty cheap, and a good strategy could be just to share some of that equipment, and certainly have a pinned post on your forum saying, if you want to create content, this is how you do it, and keep linking to it. Okay, apparently we have to cut it. So, but I'll be at the area at the back. Thanks again to all of you guys, and huge thanks to our community for helping us grow this far. Thank you.